Here we are, Justin. Another sacking in the Championship. But for many people, they may look at Sheehan's departure and see 2 wins in 10. Okay, not great, not terrible. 5 losses in that time again, not great, not terrible. I think if you've watched Swansea during this time, though, then you would say, yeah, this needed to happen, really, didn't it?
Yeah, they've been a difficult watch. I do feel for Swansea fans. I mean, if you've been paying attention to social media over the past 6 weeks, every single result and performance has been met with Alan Sheehan out vitriol. It has been persistent, and it's almost been confusing to a point, because there'll be times where they pick up wins and there's still be frustration to Alan Sheehan, but that's because they've been so poor going forwards. They are a side that do not create, and I know we touched on it in our weekend show, but obviously we could touch on it a little bit more, but numbers wise they're scarily bad going forwards, and that's despite spending a decent money on players in the final third. So yeah, it's not really a surprise. It's been a poor start. It's been a start where they have not looked at all interesting in going forward, just relying on thunder bastard after thunder bastard from Shan Potnik. So yeah, it's not a surprise, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we've got to keep in mind this is coming off the back of 2 spells as a caretaker manager where he did really well, didn't he? He got spells. 5 wins on the bounce in his second spell in charge. And so it got to the point where Swansea almost had to give him the job. And then as soon as he gets the job, it all goes to pot. It's a tale as old as time. It's happened many times before. And that was always the question when it came to Swansea this season. How would Alan Sheehan get on as the permanent Swansea manager? And unfortunately, it's not gone very well because, as you mentioned, the numbers, which we'll get onto very shortly with them going forwards, are absolutely frightening. We've got a statement from Swansea regarding the decision to sack Sheehan, Justin. This is from the owners, Brett Cravett and Jason Cohen. They say Alan has been instrumental in helping to improve the club through 2 periods of time. Alan has a tireless work ethic, an honest approach, and a positive attitude. He has put his full effort into the job on behalf of the club. The club would like to place on record its thanks to Alan for all its hard work during his time at Swansea City. So, as we say, he was a coach for many months now, actually. He was a coach back under the days of Luke Williams being there. And unfortunately, it's just not been able to replicate it into him being the permanent manager, has he, Justin?
Well, he set high standards for himself. I'm just reading some of the numbers now. A 42% win record in his first stint as caretaker manager in 2023, and a 58% win record in his second stint last season. It's just elite. They need him as a caretaker manager until they find a new manager. That's where he sits best, isn't it? He's the world's best caretaker. Honestly, it's ridiculous numbers. But yeah, I mean, we touched on it, I said, at the weekend, where attacking wise and going forwards wise, their numbers last season, especially in that 5-game winning spell, they were beating opponents and beating them, I would say, fairly. They were creating more chances, getting into good shooting positions more regularly. But that's not transpired into this season, and that's despite spending a decent amount on Adam Ida and Zidane Inusa as well. It's not working, and it's not been working throughout the entire season. And as I say, I think when you spend that amount of money on those forward players and you don't get a tune out of them at all, you're going to be under pressure. And that's probably where that's probably coming to the mind and the thinking of the Swansea board as well. They spent the most money this summer than they have since they came down from the Premier League. That's how much of an upheaval or change in tune it's been from a Swansea perspective. So of course they're going to expect results, and that's not been the case.
No, it's definitely not been the case. And it's strange, isn't it, how a manager can do, or a coach rather, can do so well as the caretaker. As we say, went on a 5-game winning run last season. Also avoided defeat at Leeds last season as well. And here they are, as soon as they get the permanent job, it all just goes wrong. And you mentioning how poor they've been going forwards. That's been the real issue, hasn't it? How shocking they've been in attack. I'll just repeat a lot of the numbers I mentioned at the weekend. Swansea have created by far the fewest big chances in the division this season, just 15 all season long. The next lowest is 23 by Sheffield Wednesday. That's how far off they've been in terms of creating big chances. But it's not just that. They've got the lowest XG in attack. They have had the fewest touches in the opposition box, despite having one of the highest average possessions per game in the division as well. So as you can imagine, it doesn't take much imagination to think about how Swansea have been playing this season. It's been a lot of possession without much penetration at all, a lot of sideways passing without much cut and thrust. And that's ultimately why Swansea fans have been very frustrated about not just how the results have been going, but how their team has been performing, because it's been a tough watch at times with Swansea City, hasn't it?
Well, how frustrating can it be as a supporter just watching a team keep the ball and not do anything with it? This is despite having Ronaldo on one wing. They've got Ethan Galbraith, who's not been used to his full potential. Josh Tymon, his ability at wing back to create a decent amount of width and be an asset on a flank is not being utilised. Similarly with Josh Key on the right as well. I think they're okay defensively. They're fine. They've got a solid base, and I think that's one positive you can take from this Alan Sheehan spell is they're not an easy side to break down, but that's at the expense of anything interesting going forwards. And it's really hard to compare them to anything else because they have been the league's worst attacking team, forward-thinking team. There's barely anything. So there's a lot of untapped potential in that final third, which is quite exciting, actually, because if they can pick the right man to come in and pick things up and push them forward, as I say, Alan Sheehan laid some solid foundations down defensively. So if they can get a manager in who can get a tune out of that forward line, then Swansea could push up the table.
Yeah, but that goes off the back of what we were saying at the weekend, Justin. You look at the defence. I think defence, man for man, is really strong at Swansea. You've got Kabanga and Burgess at the back, who are two very solid defenders, great on the ball. Josh Tymon and Josh Key, the two Joshes. I genuinely think in terms of fullback pairings, they may be the best in the division, or at least pound for pound the best in the division, because both are really solid, fantastic players. Ethan Galbraith has been a fantastic signing, pound for pound, one of the best signings of the summer in mine. Gonzalo Franco's maybe not hit the heights that he did last season, but still is a really, really solid player. So that's a nice midfield pairing as well. If you look at the starting 11 at Swansea, most of it is really quite nice, actually. It's just that attack where you're like, it could be a lot better. But at the same time, Sheehan was getting a tune out of that attack last season, and it's by and large the same players he had there last year. So why it's suddenly gone downhill so much is pretty confusing, quite frankly. But I think there's definitely a lot to work with whoever comes in next to replace Sheehan. It's just obviously it's gone really, really badly this season. But at the same time, Justin, a little look ahead to what's coming up on the Second Tier YouTube channel. I'm releasing my updated league table predictions tomorrow. I won't give too much away about where I've put Swansea in that, but it's fair to say based off the start to the season that they've had, I'm not feeling too optimistic. So before we get into the cut and thrust of who's next, Swansea, if they don't get this appointment right, could be a team I'm a bit worried about. I don't know about you.
No, I agree. I do agree. I think going forwards, they are that flat. They are relying on Vipotnik doing something interesting from outside the box. Even Adam Eder, one of his goals a couple of weeks ago was from outside the box. They are relying heavily on something spectacular happening in a game, which isn't sustainable. That will catch up with you. And ultimately, especially down at the bottom of the table now, where you've got a Norwich and a Southampton who, given the investment in the squads and they're about to change managers, they're about to get a new manager in themselves, you'd expect them to kick on and improve. Similarly with Sheffield United, you'd hope that the penny does drop at some point for those players and they start to improve as well. That makes it a very competitive bottom 6 or 7, which Swansea currently find themselves in. So yeah, you are right. If they don't get the managerial appointment right, defensively I think they're okay, but I think if you go back to last season, the likes of Derby, they were okay defensively. Stoke were okay defensively, but they weren't creating enough chances to be better than their opposition, basically. And they were being edged out on tight games, and that dragged them into a relegation battle right up until the final game of the season. Swansea don't want to find themselves in that position after spending the most amount of money they spent since they've been relegated from the Premier League all those years ago.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that I think needs to be highlighted here, that the Swansea owners, they've only been in place for a year, maybe less than that, and I think they may have to do a bit of winning round when it comes to the Swansea supporters, because as you say, the business over the summer hasn't been great. You look at the players who have been playing this season, aside from Ethan Galbraith and Cameron Burgess, not many of them have really pulled up many trees. I think is it Stamenic in midfield who was being tipped as sort of a replacement for Matt Grimes, and that's not really happened, and they've really missed someone like Matt Grimes in the past few months. But the owners, when it comes to appointing a new manager as well, obviously Alan Sheehan's been given the job full time, and this looks to have been a serious error in judgment on their behalf based off how he did over a small sample size of games. And now you wonder where they're going to go next and whether they can get this appointment right, because if they don't, then they could be in a bit of trouble this season. And that brings us nicely on to Justin. Who on earth do they go to next? Because I guess first and foremost, they'll want someone who plays, in quotation marks, the Swansea way, because that's something that Swansea fans, as we've found out over many years covering them in the Championship, that's how they want their team to approach things. But if the results, maybe we're at the stage now with them where the results matter a lot more than style of play. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, the bloody Swansea way. The thing that makes picking the Swansea manager almost impossible, the next Swansea manager, because managers have come in like Steve Cooper. Steve Cooper's had the most amount of success at the helm at Swansea out of all the managers since they've been back in the Championship, and he's the one who didn't play the Swansea way. Obviously Michael Duff didn't. We know that. And Alan Sheehan, there's elements of it, but there wasn't enough. But then you go back to the Russell Martins, Graham Potter's, it's possession with a bit of substance, but not a hell of a lot. That Graham Potter side's probably the better one, although that was the one freshest from the Premier League. I think picking the next manager is a very difficult thing for Swansea because of what lurks behind them, which is the Swansea way, which is the expectation from fans of getting that appointment right. I think bin that off, because that makes picking the next manager impossible, absolutely impossible. Because you have to go out and find a manager who deploys a style of play that is ultimately play it on the ground with an attacking emphasis. I think football's transitioned a little bit since then, so therefore the pool of those managers is quite low, and the pool of managers that they're competing with, you've got to remember Middlesbrough, Southampton and Norwich are all looking for managers as well. All got bigger budgets than Swansea, and all will have aspirations of playing the Premier League next season, however they choose to do it. Obviously Norwich is going to be a bit more difficult, but you'd expect that to be the case over the next couple of years. Swansea, I'm sure that is the case in the ambition, but they are much further behind Southampton and Middlesbrough, and maybe even Norwich.
Yeah, you mentioned about ditching the Swansea way. I'm not sure you really can with this team because it's been set up to play that way. They've been building towards getting players who are suited to playing the quotation marks Swansea way. And if they were to get a manager who plays a completely different way, then I fear that they may be ending up with another Michael Duff situation if they do go down that route. I'm just looking at who is top of the odds market with the bookies for the next Swansea City manager, and it is very much the usual candidates, Justin. Michael Carrick is the favourite at 4-1. You've got Gary O'Neill, Brendan Rodgers, who are next up. Then Steven Gerrard, Russell Martin, possible return there. I'm not sure how Swansea fans would react to that. I mean, Brendan Rodgers would be a Swansea return as well, but I can't see him dropping down to the Championship, let alone for a Swansea side who are struggling. And then you've got, again, the usual candidates who seem to get linked with every Championship job right now: Will Still, Tony Mowbray, Carlos Corberán, etc. I could go on. So it's going to be interesting to see which route they do go down. But one point you mentioned there, which I think is really, really crucial to bring up, is Swansea are in a bit of a difficult market right now because they're competing with three other clubs who are also looking for a manager. Of course, Middlesbrough, who are second in the table as we speak, they're not going to usurp them for a manager target, are they? Southampton, obviously not started the season very well, but have a much bigger budget and will still be thinking they could salvage at least a playoff place this season. And then Norwich, okay, have had a shocking start, but a lot more resource to work with than at Swansea, and maybe we'll be able to look at that and think, okay, they've been in the Premier League relatively recently as well. Maybe we could salvage something there as well. So they're in a very competitive market, aren't they? And attracting a new manager, I think, could be quite difficult for Swansea.
Yeah, this is why I think they've got to be a little bit different with it. funnily enough, the Luke Williams scenario was then being different, and I think he was the right blueprint of manager. It just didn't quite work out, except 10-game spell, or sort of around 10 games last season, where it sort of seemed to fall apart along with the West Brom links.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've got to keep in mind the West Brom links were a big factor there, weren't they? If they didn't happen, we could have been in a very different position with Swansea right now, I think, because I really like Luke Williams at Swansea.
Yeah, so do I, and he's got Peterborough playing like Barcelona just after 2 weeks. So it's penny for those thoughts there. But this is why I think Swansea have got to think quite differently with how they appoint their next manager, because I look at who they're competing with: Norwich, Southampton, Middlesbrough. Michael Carrick, I think, is a perfect solution to that. But again, does he want to come back into management so soon after being sacked in the summer? Maybe, maybe not. But also, there are probably more attractive jobs out there for him right now. Brendan Rodgers and Russell Martin have got history with Swansea, as we know. But will Brendan Rodgers come into the Championship? No, his ego's too big. Russell Martin's ego's too big as well, so I doubt that's going to happen. There's your bingo card.
Exactly. It's a normal Championship. It's a normal second tier podcast episode, and it involves Justin Peach digging in at Russell Martin. Classic.
Yeah. I'm not going to resist the option to do it, am I? Yeah, as I say, in terms of thinking a little bit differently, I say ditch the Swansea style of play. I'd go for Michael Skubala at Lincoln City. I think he's been fantastic at Lincoln. I know you're going to say he doesn't quite fit the bill, but in terms of going forwards, he's turned Lincoln into set piece specialists. They're very aggressive, very proactive in how they attack, and they're very solid defensively. And I know you say he's not going to fit the Swansea blueprint. He was part of the England futsal team, Ryan.
Oh, well, there you go. That changes everything, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, I like Michael Skubala. I think he's going to be in the Championship at some point, because he has been doing a fantastic job at Lincoln, but that would be a huge contrast in the style of play if they were to go with that. And I think that would be ill-advised. Completely going for a complete contrast in styles would, I think, be very risky. And as I said a bit earlier, would be echoing kind of a Michael Duff situation from before, really. But yeah, we talk about Swansea competing against these other clubs. That's going to be the difficult thing, isn't it? Because say you're in the shoes of someone like Michael Carrick, I think you would be, if Swansea came knocking on the door, you'd be like, okay, mate, but I might be getting the Southampton job. I'm going to wait out and hold off to see what's going on there first. Same with Gary O'Neill. Anyone really who Swansea would be looking at and thinking they'd be our number one candidate will possibly be holding out in case one of the other three come calling, because I think unfortunately Swansea are just at the bottom of that food chain, because they're a club who haven't done much in a long time and don't seem to be going anywhere very quickly. So that's the issue that Swansea have got with here, and may have to go with someone who's a less fancied. And the first person who comes to mind in that regard just now, I guess, is Liam Manning at Norwich, because I don't think that would be a bad appointment at all. Whether he's willing to jump straight back into management after what was such a bruising spell, I'm not sure. But style of play wise, I think he would suit. And if he is willing to get back on the horse straight away, then I think that would actually do the job pretty nicely.
I think that's the funny thing about timing is, maybe if Liam Manning was sacked when he should have been sacked 6 or 7 weeks ago, he might have been up for taking a job this international break, and Swansea's the perfect fit for him, because I think whilst I don't think he plays the Swansea way, I think he plays as close to it. And I know the Norwich job has been a disaster, but he showed at Bristol City he can get a team overperforming and improving individuals at the same time as well, and getting them into top 6 contention. So yeah, I think Liam Manning would be perfect. I just think timing wise, it's a terrible moment for Swansea to obviously part ways with Alan Sheehan and Liam Manning being available, and obviously how bad that spell was at Norwich for Liam Manning. I'd have Christmas off if I was Liam Manning. I think he deserves it.
Yeah, I won't blame him, but at the same time, I think this is a pretty perfect job for him, really, where because his stock has taken such a bruising with how Norwich has gone. And if he wants to get a Championship job again, I'm not sure there'll be many opportunities like this where he can get a Championship job at a club who aren't in a terrible state right now. It's not gone so bad that Swansea are in imminent danger of going down, but it's still enough for them to have something to build on. So it'll be interesting to see what route they do go down. I guess another shout actually for me would be Hannes Hoff-Turup from Norwich last season. I think that could work quite nicely because he played some beautiful football last season. And if you're looking for someone who wants to play the so-called Swansea way, I think that'll work quite nicely. And he's got a proven record of developing youngsters. What do you think?
No, I didn't consider that. Obviously, he was linked with the QPR job in the summer, wasn't he? So he could be looking to come back into Championship even now. I think that's a good shout. And I know we sort of centre around sort of ex-Championship managers, but I think Johannes Hoff-Turup is a really, really decent one. One thing I'll mention about this Swansea team is they don't look like a side who are low on confidence either. So I think if you can come in and get a tune out of that attack with Jan Potnik, who largely has done quite well this season, Adam Eden needs picking up a little bit. I think there's a lot of potential with this Swansea side, and I think if they can get the right manager in, like a Hoff-Turup, I think they can push up the table. I think they've got that potential. I really, really do. So yeah, that's a lovely shout, that is, Ryan.
Oh, cheers, mate. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see which route they go down because, I mean, they probably need a caretaker right now, but I don't think they're too keen to. I don't think they're going to go down that route for the time being, for considering how this one's just gone. But they may have to hold out a bit wait for those 3 other jobs to get filled, and then have a pick of who they want there. But if they want someone as soon as, then they're going to have to get a bloody move on. Right, there we go, ladies and gents. This has been the Second Tier Podcast, and this has been us reacting straight off the back of the news that Alan Sheehan has been sacked as the Swansea City manager. We'll be back again on Thursday to have a news roundup of everything going on from across the Championship, so we look forward to seeing you then for that. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.